Welcome back, everybody. You got Justin and Tim here. We're joined by Scot Amos. He's the head of studio at Crystal Dynamics. They're working on Marvel's Avengers. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Oh, dude, it's my total pleasure. It's very exciting to talk to you guys, and I just love talking about what we're working on. So this is a great opportunity for me.
That's great. And you guys are, speaking of great opportunities, I mean, you and your team are working on what I think is kind of a dream project. You're working on the Avengers. Wow, that's quite the project. Now, I know that you had a big coming out party for the game coming up on about a year ago now, and we've seen a few updates here and there since then, but I just wanted to get a sense from you of kind of where are things at now? Where's development at? What are you guys working on, and what's changed since then?
Well, we've never stopped working on it. Certainly, this is both a passion project for us as a studio, and it's one of those things that we started as fans before we started working on this. So the idea that we get to now work on something that we've been fans of has been just this tremendous both privilege and, I should say, honor for us to be able to say, how can we add our own creative lens and vision to this amazing history of all the stuff that's gone on in Marvel. So for us, from the beginning, it's certainly been a dream project. And in these last few months, as everybody, the world certainly has changed around us in some very interesting ways, shall we say. So one of the things for the studio, we said when this started happening and looking, since we're based primarily here in the Bay Area and also in Bellevue, Washington, we have an issue where two of our studios are located in hot zones. We're like, okay, we got to move from a primarily on-site team to literally everybody off-site. And it's something that we pulled off, and I can't say enough good things about my operations and IT team. Like, they managed to mobilize us in a matter of days from hundreds of people on site to, I would say, 80 to 90% capacity of working from home offsite in a matter of days. And then over the last few weeks, or I should say the first few weeks, they literally did a great job of optimizing everything from, well, how do you remote desktop in, and how do you play on a console, and how do you use other platforms? So it's been an incredible learning curve for us, and I'm just so proud of the team of how well they both accepted and adapted and adopted this new way of working, because this doesn't feel like it's a short-term thing. This has now become an opportunity for us to say, we can have lots of people working off-site and being incredibly productive. So it's actually changing how we think about our studio even going forward.
That's great. It's really great to hear that the team is adapting so fluidly and so well to this evolving situation. Speaking of changing, though, I wanted to kind of just ask, I got a chance to see some early gameplay footage of Marvel's Avengers last year, and I am curious about talking about what's changed. If there's a particular character whose gameplay the team has been iterating on a lot, if there's been like big changes to any of the particular characters as you've been kind of continuing to flesh out the game.
Well, I would say two different things there. One of the things is that we are constantly always fans of our fans. And so when our fans give us feedback, when we have people user testing the game, when we have folks being able to come in, see it, give us some critical feedback, we listen to that and take that to heart. And everything from, we want this character to feel a certain way, or we don't quite feel this mechanic or even this look being something that sets them apart. And I think you saw over last year, from the moment we announced at E3 as well as we rolled through the end of last year, that we started showing off more of what sets our characters uniquely apart, what gives them their unique style and vision and version through this crystal lens for what Marvel's Avengers is. And certainly all we've done with our characters is constantly iterate and playtest. I mean, we play every day. Like, as the fans of the franchise, but also the game makers, we have this privilege and this responsibility to play and say, does this feel Hulk enough? Does this feel Black Widow enough? And what can we do to just amplify that a little bit, to make them even feel a little more super here and there? And I think to us, that's been that fun of getting it out there, getting people to play. We had lots of people with hands-on experience across the European stuff that we did last year, getting to play some of the early tutorial levels like the Golden Gate Bridge level, getting tons of feedback from people, and then being able to say, yep, that didn't quite hit the way we wanted it to. What can we do to make it even better? And so every moment of our day is say, how do we actually deliver even a better version of each of these heroes? And certainly the biggest thing for us that we really haven't even gotten into playing or showing people yet, because they've really only gotten to play one of the, the Golden Gate Bridge level, the beginning of the game, is some of the super cool kind of gear and upgrades that you get into with your heroes down the path. And so that for us has been one of the most fun, knowing where our schedule's at, being able to get, our September 4th date and say, this is going to be an amazing date for us to have that time to make this great game. We've actually done a lot of investment into upgrading how our gear system works, how characters can go and customize that gear. So I would say, of anything, it's more broadly than just one hero being addressed. It's us saying, yep, we want to make these heroes awesome. We love them. We need them to each feel heroic in their own right. And then being able to expand upon that. And I think we've done so much to invest in both custom moves as well as into the whole gear and upgrade system for everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. And on the topic of trying to make it feel really unique and compelling and like kind of uniquely Crystal, I'm wondering, from a sort of story perspective, what sets Marvel's Avengers apart from, the MCU and then even beyond that, like what makes this Avengers story like a uniquely Crystal story?
Which is fun for us because, it's intimidating. We're starstruck, right? We walk into a room with folks from Marvel like Bill Roseman, who's been there for 20 plus years as an editor. And like, this is the guy who helped craft these characters and actually bring these heroes and various comics and stories to life and works with them every day. And now they're asking us to say, okay, what do you guys want to do with them? What's the Crystal lens you want to put on this to give a unique spin or take to it? So it's not the game of the movie or of the show or of the comic. It was always from the beginning, hey, what can we do that is true to who we are as Crystal, that can actually still be true to the world of Marvel, looking at that 80 years of history and saying, how do we cherry pick inspirational elements and even aspirational elements and look back into Tales of Suspense in the 60s, look back into Jason Aaron's run with Mighty Thor and say, these are some great comics, or the Ultimates, and what elements can we take from any of these different classic series and comics and say, what can we do to bring something unique to it? And I think that's from the beginning. Two elements. We're saying the villain and kind of that, shall we say, point of view character were the two first linchpins we put in there, saying with Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, being that point of view character that says this is a character that was just coming into our own, that's only been around for a few years in overall Marvel's world, that we can use that as a center point, a focusing point that immediately helps us stand alone as nobody's done this, of having this character and her origin story and how she's needing to find her way through this world. Comparing that also with the villain in AIM, with advanced idea mechanics. And they've been around since the 60s. Like, they're not new to the world. They're certainly not new to comic book fans, but they haven't been expressed as the primary villain in a major blockbuster event like this. And so being able to have those two kind of endpoints of beginning this new hero's career with Miss Marvel and having the villains of AIM and what advanced idea mechanics means and how we thread those two things together in our world, that to us kind of sets the kind of foundation that we then build upon with all those classic elements from Black Widow and Hulk and Iron Man and Thor and all these other heroes that certainly have become very well known, particularly these last 10 years. And so for us, it's living up to an expectation of people now know a lot about these heroes, but they don't necessarily know their prehistory, looking back previously to 10 years, looking back into 20 years or 30 years or even back further, and then saying, here are these elements we can kind of draw forward to give even a more full expression of these characters from a different perspective. So certainly our point of view hero with Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, and looking at our exploration of the main bad guy in this world being AIM, and what does that actually mean? Those are two elements that certainly make us unique and set us apart.
That's really cool that you mentioned that, because it just makes me think about Crystal Dynamics from a broader perspective of like, looking like the Tomb Raider franchise and the studio's ability to take something that's like familiar and beloved, but kind of cast it in this really unique new way that makes it feel really fresh and accessible. So I think that's really apt the way you put that.
Well, you just used one of our core phrases. We call it fresh but familiar. The idea that, I know I have superheroes. I get superheroes. Really? Well, have you seen superheroes like this? And they have, this a moment at the beginning of the game that things don't go quite the way they should. And we lose Captain America and the team is disbanded, become even outlawed, and the whole world changes to, oh my gosh, what's happening? And so being able to take things like this Inhuman storyline and taking Kamala Khan and Miss Marvel's origin tale and taking advanced idea mechanics and doing them our way means that people who are fans of anything Marvel will have some way in, will already have an understanding. And I think that's why Kamala is so special to us, is that she is us in a way, right? She's a fan of the Avengers. So inside of the story, she's a fan. People who come to be part of this world and play our game are fans of the Avengers. And so now you have this very empathetic, if not sympathetic character like, oh yeah, I have a similar point of view. I want to fit in and I want to become a hero and I want to be somebody who can admire and help my Avengers. So I do think it gives us a unique angle on how to get people into this world.
And on the note of advanced idea mechanics, it's interesting to see them kind of positioned as the main villain here. What did that decision allow Crystal to do with regards to the narrative of the game or to the gameplay of the game?
Yeah, the advanced idea mechanics is so much fun for us because if you look the way we've integrated it in the story, very explicitly, these guys feel like they're the heroes. Because when it starts, you have this event at A-Day, you have this new clean energy technology called Terrigen that basically the events that go awry there cause this devastation through San Francisco, which leads to the whole point of the Avengers being disbanded. Well, AIM steps in and says, we want to save the world. We want to come in not as some twisted mustache twirling kind of bad guys, but like they step in to say, we can make the world a better place. We can use our science over superpowers. We can use our technology and create this kind of technocratic utopia that says we can make things better. We can make how trains run better. We can make your cell phones better. We can make your technologies overall better. And all of that is intentional for them to literally say, we think science can save the world. And that's how it starts. And then you will start seeing as it evolves through the story, that can go to an extreme. And when it goes to too far an extreme, that might lead to maybe, shall we say, some friction-causing decisions where they're like, well, science over superheroes, we don't need superheroes anymore. You can see how that naturally sets up some conflict with our superheroes. Like, wait, what does that mean? Does that mean they're trying to take our powers or imprison us? So suddenly we get this natural conflict between a group who really think the right thing for society is to use science to control, measure, and make everything better versus the superheroes who feel like, wait, we're trying to save the world from all the other problems that happen and you guys are trying to suppress their freedoms? Like, what's going on there? So it creates a very interesting tale for us and a natural conflict.
Yeah, I guess one interesting thing about Crystal having the license to jump in and experiment and put their own sort of identity on these classic superheroes is just through the gameplay and how the Avengers express themselves. We've seen some really compelling stuff like that you see Iron Man rush into battle and he's kind of doing maybe a series of like what kind of look like melee moves, but yet he's integrating, his repulsors. And it's just kind of a unique look for the character. I'm wondering what it's like, what philosophy do you approach, creating a new move set for these superheroes and sort of like, what does it feel like to expand the move sets of these iconic characters?
Well, I will tell you that one of the biggest challenges we started with, and you guys know Crystal, Tomb Raider, certainly Lara Croft, and she has all kinds of very cool moves back in the day. And when we started this, we're like 6 heroes. Okay, how do we take all the stuff we know how to do and then add to it the things that we haven't done, like flying? That's a very important thing for a Thor or an Iron Man. And how do we do types of traversal moves that Lara couldn't do, that only superheroes could actually do? So we started looking at this in the initial stages of take what we know, expand upon that, and add the things that we don't know or don't have. And as we got into it, we're like, oh my gosh, we have all these heroes that move different, fight different. They have different types of projectiles. They have different types of powers and abilities. And that's when we actually went off and recruited Vince Napoli to come in as our combat designer, a combat lead, and say, Vince, this is the guy who's done God of War. He'd worked, back in the day with me at EA. And so I'm like, this is a guy who lives, breathes every day how to make combat amazing, how to make heroes feel great, how to add the perks and the skills to these guys that say, this is what makes them stand out. This is how Widow would play. Right? She'd have this combination of her guns and her gadgetry and her very special, very acrobatic kind of moves. This is what makes Iron Man and Tony Stark unique, how he relies on high tech, but he also has some more bombastic ways of trying to enter into a fray and control an entire situation versus the God of Thunder. And so they literally, as a strike team, this player team that we have, said each hero, what are their individual pillars? How do we actually take those, expand on them, say this is what's going to make Iron Man feel great? And your example talking about Tony Stark or Iron Man wading into a certain combat and what he's using, we have so many unique powers and abilities that you can unlock these. As you skill up your hero, as you level up your hero, you unlock skills and skill points that you can then choose. How do I want my hero to be customized? Do I want to invest in his repulsors? Iron Man default repulsors. Everybody gets that. Do I want to invest in lasers, which now has this interesting, different kind of feel, a little more dynamic, a little more accurate, but you have to be kind of focused on one enemy at a time? Do I want to upgrade to rockets and actually having rockets that can do homing and everything else? But then there's another layer past that where the player team actually added gear that is actually made by different manufacturers. Like we have gear from Stark. We have gear made by Pym. And the idea that these gear have special perks inside of them. Suddenly I have an Iron Man with my skills unlocked that I'm using my lasers with a piece of Pym technology that I can be flying through an environment, hitting things with lasers. And if I can damage them enough, I can actually affect them with Pym particles. Like you can start seeing these possibilities of layer upon layer of upgrading my hero, upgrading my skills, then adding custom gear. And all of that evolves as your heroes level up and as you expand in the world. It's been an incredibly daunting task to say we went from, well, we have one great star hero with Lara to we have all these heroes that we have to feel and make them feel unique and play. And we're so proud of that. When people got to have hands-on with Kamala Khan and have this amazing polymorph ability, her ability to embiggen that she has, where she can stretch and squeeze and grow and grab people from a distance. Now you have this very unique kind of mid and long range melee combat. That's a weird thing to think about. Like, oh, I can reach across the playfield, grab something, pull it closer, shake it, squeeze it, and then I should get into a fight with it. Like, there's just things that are so amazing that depending on which character you play, they each shine differently for different reasons.
That's cool. Is there a particular kind of combination of powers and gear that you have been just tickled by in playtesting up to this point?
Well, I was actually referencing one of my favorites. Certainly when I first, it's one of the things that I definitely play. I play this game every day. It's one of the things that is both a privilege and a need, is just to get in there, know how the game is going, how it's evolving, what we're trying today, and doing these really long play sessions where you start unlocking higher level skills and gear and things that we're even going to talk about, over these next few months, where people can get a sense of even more in depth of what these pieces look like. When you get an Iron Man and you're flying through an area and you actually have, rockets, particularly if you have them really leveled up and you have the right skills equipped, and then you have the right gear on top of that, it starts to feel like this massive force. Like, yeah, these small guys, I can take care of them quickly. These big things that I have to fight, yeah, they're more armored. Yeah, they take some more damage, but I can get a certain advantage of being at range, keeping myself out of harm's way, but being able to help my team, whether it's my AI team or actual people playing co-op with me, where I can actually build myself uniquely into the Iron Man that supports my team the right way for the right kind of combats that I've got into. So Pym particles are one of my favorites. It's just both comical, but it's also amazing that if you can fly through an area and you have this gigantic robotic device that you're fighting made by AIM, you're like, oh my God, this thing is huge. And then suddenly it's smacked with Pym particles and it gets about half or 1/3 of its size. And you see a Hulk over there and just beat the hell out of it. Like, that's awesome. And that is one of those moments that I think players will be thrilled to start creating those moments for themselves.
Can you tell us a little bit more about just kind of what the gameplay loop is like for someone who is maybe 100 hours into Marvel's Avengers and is sitting down to play for the night? Like, what are they going to be doing?
Oh, that's a great question. So the interface that we created inside the fiction, we call it the War Table. And the War Table sits in the middle of your helicarrier. And the helicarrier, is something that over the time, the Avengers actually have to kind of bring their broken down base back to, shall we say, back to snuff. But the idea that this interface, this War Table, becomes their one lens into the entire world of where are all the hot spots of action, where are the things happening that we need to go and rescue somebody, or we need to go stop some travesty, or we need to go investigate an area, or we need to figure out what is AIM doing over here that needs to be solved. And so from the player's perspective, whenever they get online, whenever they get into the game, doesn't have to even be online if they're playing just the campaign, they go to the War Table and it always leads you to the next piece. If it's a story mission specifically on that main core campaign, it'll have an Avengers A icon as a logo. So you always know that's the next thing I want to do if I want to continue specifically the core story arc. But after the story arc is done, then you have this world that opens up with all these different types of Warzone missions, and they have stories. And there are specific ones, even what we call these hero chains, where, for example, once you have Black Widow back in your roster, it opens up a specific set of hero missions for her that have her icon. So you will see a Black Widow icon on your War Table. You'll be like, oh, if I follow this is going to tell me more about Black Widow. We'll have custom rewards for Black Widow. We'll have some part of her story arc that will help fill in some gaps of maybe what she did between A-Day and now, or some other events of things that she's facing down some specific bad guys. So those things will open for each of the different heroes, and we will continue adding those things real-time post-launch. So there'll be new missions and new challenges and new stories, because to us, that's one of the secrets of Avengers. People already know these heroes. They have some fan love for them from either comics or movies or other places. So we know that's a secret sauce for us, is that there is certainly a loop of going and getting gear and boosting the gear with resources you find and upgrading it so you can upgrade your hero. That actually absolutely happens, but that's just one part of it. The fact that these are heroes you know and love, that have stories that thread in between who they are and who they have been and where they're going. We use those stories to help tell these missions, even with AIM. Like, what is AIM really up to now that we're post the main campaign, which I won't give away any spoilers, but the idea that there are other villains inside of AIM, and they have their own big agendas that stretch far beyond just this kind of near-term looking around the globe to what else do they want to try and investigate. And so for us, those become those seeds that we drop in that people are like, oh, wait, I know that reference is from this item, from this issue of Tales of Suspense. I bet you they're going to go down this arc with this giant thing opening up somewhere in the next month or year from now. So for us, those are the kind of seeds that we're looking at sowing with this first get the game out there, play through the campaign, get into that post world, and then say, I sat down at the war table. What do I want to do tonight? I want to go get a custom outfit for Black Widow. All right, well, here's her hero chain. It might end with a specific outfit you can only earn if you play through that hero chain. Or I want to go unlock some specific gear that I can only get if I complete this particular kind of boss chain for any of the heroes. And so for us, it gives players lots of ways to choose each night of, do I want to get online and do some more story? Do I want to get online tonight with my friends and go play specific missions where we're battling to find some unique gear? We want to give people flexible ways to play all through that one interface of the war table.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it makes me think of the one thing I like about like those unique missions where you reference like, Black Widow and getting some, unique gear for her is I'm the type of player that sometimes will be like, take a franchise, I don't know, like Monster Hunter, for example, and be like, I'm a hammer guy. And I'll just like dig my heels in and kind of falsely create these barriers to trying out other things sometimes. And so those sorts of, incentives that you're talking about to maybe try out different characters and pursue their paths and stuff is like really compelling to me. So it's
good to hear. It's certainly for us one of the exciting things that these characters have endured because of their stories, right? They're certainly cool, they're beautiful, they're fun, they have all kinds of magic. They always have, their own problems that they have to deal with, but there's this fun of this, epic storytelling with the human spirit, and be able to say, at the end of the day, these characters have that humanity to them that we want to always understand and keeps us grounded. But they're also superheroes. And so the idea that we need, and we love being superheroes, any of us, right? Wanting to go off and save people from some disaster or right whatever wrong has happened. And so there's a natural inclination to be a hero. But then when you can get more intimate and you can discover, I should say, collectibles that we leave around that people can find and say, oh, if I find this thing, I can actually read a report from the trial when this actually happened after A-Day. And you can get really deep. If you want to go that far, you can invest deeply into the fiction and find so much backstory and history of how did we get here and what happened during A-Day and who is the characters that work in AIM and where's Maria Hill and S.H.I.E.L.D. at. Like, those are all threads that get kind of dropped in there, like the kind of hooks we throw in the water during the core campaign, and then players can opt to pursue them during the campaign or after they finish that core campaign, that the world is now open, that they can go off and explore more of those things.
That's really cool.
Awesome. I think we had one more item on our list here that we can get into, and then I'll tell you to start thinking now if there's anything that you want to say to fans before we let you go so that we don't catch you off guard with that. But before we get to that, were there any specific Marvel storylines that you pulled any beats from, or that you tossed nods into the game from? Are there specific little Easter eggs that hyper fans should be keeping an eye out for, or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I can't give you the Easter eggs. Like, what? That's
well,
not
sure.
You should discover these. But I will give you hints though. So I made a couple references. But if you look, like even some of the outfits that we've shown for Iron Man already, 2014, there was Original Sin was a storyline that he was in that we said that's a great inspiration for us for one of the cool outfits that you can get for Iron Man. Or you'll see in some upcoming stuff we'll release soon, Donald Blake is one of those names for Thor that comes back from, I think it was the early 60s, called Journey into Mystery, where it actually was one of his identities he would take on when he visited Earth. Or even looking at like Invincible Iron Man, which is back in 2010, there's some cool gear and elements in there that we said, hey, these things look pretty cool. What we would do is take any of these elements and we would then translate them through our crystal lens and say, hey, here's what we want to do to be both honoring and paying homage to these elements that are inspiring us, but also make them unique to us. So it has just a slight difference or enough difference that it feels unique or refreshed or modernized. And it's something that we love doing. Again, it's taking that fresh and familiar approach of there's so many stories, there's so many heroes, there's so many villains, there's so much that's been done in the Marvel Universe, being able to take that challenge of take these inspirational pieces, bring them into the Crystal Lens version, and then twist them just enough that it feels fresh yet familiar, as we talked about, and then beyond that. And I think that's the fun thing about this game, for us, is it's telling these stories that we know and love. It's telling unique versions of some of these stories. It's getting the privilege of taking Kamala Khan and showcasing her as that point of view character, all the way to AIM as the bad guys for the core story. But then past that, when we have more heroes and more villains coming after that are at no additional cost, that people are like, wow, this is just the beginning. And then we're going to have more and more stuff for months and years to come. It's super exciting for us. We just can't wait to get people into this world so they get a sense of, yeah, this is a great way to start. I understand who these characters are. You fall in love with them again or for the first time, which is quite possible. And then we start expanding beyond that. We're very excited.
That's great. I love the phrasing you used earlier about translating these characters through the crystal lens. I like to imagine a physical lens made of crystal housed in the center of the studio that you need 2 key cards to get to.
I like it. That's a great idea. How do you know?
There you go. You can have that one for free. So yeah, we've gotten through most of the stuff that we had kind of written down here, but I would invite you, if there's anything else that you want to touch on, any other updates you want to give, or if there's just anything else that you want to say to fans as we get closer and closer to your September 4th release date.
Well, it's been a great privilege and pleasure. Thank you guys for giving us this opportunity to come and talk about it. Certainly, you can hopefully tell in my voice how much we both love it and are anxious to get the world to see and share more and more. We're very excited that in the next few weeks, the idea that we're going to have an event where people can get to see even more cool stuff and behind the scenes and get to see some looks and takes on all the cool things we've been working on. And as a team, I can't say enough about my team. They're just so committed. They're such fans. They have such heart that no matter how crazy the world has gotten around us, they've never lost that focus. It's always been no, we're going to make this. We're going to make this great. We're going to take the time that we have to make this amazing experience because, we are fans. We love this entire franchise. We, as a studio, we would take the day off to go actually see the movies. We would actually stop and say, hey, all these new comic books had come in. Bill Roseman, again, I'd mentioned from Marvel, he shows up at the studio when we were still visiting the studio with comic books, with Post-it notes through page after page, hey, this would be a cool scene, and this is a cool thing. And so we just live and breathe this stuff. And so awesome. We can't wait to get people to see it. And I think from a fan's perspective, we love our fans. We've always been honoring and saying transparently with them that we want to hear what you have to think about it. Good or bad, stuff you love, stuff you hate. We listen to all of it. We genuinely do, and we actually respect it because we do this at the end of the day for them. And we do this as both creators of fiction and storytelling and fun, but we really do at the end of the day to give something back that folks can enjoy and be a community together of saying, yeah, we're Avengers fans and these are your Avengers your way. And so that's exciting for us to have our piece of the tapestry that we get to weave in here over these next few months shipping in September.
Fantastic. Well said. Thank you so much. So that's Marvel's Avengers. It's coming to PlayStation 4 on September 4th. We've been speaking with Scot Amos, the head of studio at Crystal Dynamics. Scott, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
Scott. It is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, guys.